Welcome to the Parenting with Impact podcast with your hosts Elaine, Taylor-Klaus, and Diane, Dempster, co-creators of ImpactParents.com, an online community, award-winning blog, and service organization helping parents all over the world to raise complex kids become capable, independent adults.
Hi everyone, Elaine and Diane here, and we know that you want your complex kids to grow up to be happy and independent, and yet you're not always sure how or when to help with that.
In this podcast, we'll encourage you to collaborate with all kinds of complex kids and support them in navigating life and learning.
And we'll interview leading experts from around the world, as well as parents in our own community, talking about how training for parents actually helps these complex kids.
We'll talk about the issues we hear parents struggling with all the time and how a coach approach can support and empower your amazing young people.
We won't tell you what to do. We're going to help you figure out how. So let's move on to the next conversation. Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation of the Parenting with Impact podcast. I am here today with Jamie Blume, and we are going to talk about ADHD, I think. Is that fair? Is that a fair thing?
That is a fair thing.
You can read all about Jamie in the show notes, and I'm going to let her speak herself into the room by asking, Jamie, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you came to be doing what it is you do in the world.
Yeah, well, thanks, Elaine. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be here. What is it I do and how did I end up here is a crazy little story that all happened very organically. I have been in the helper world community my whole adult life, starting as a mediator for Department of Health and Human Services way back when. Was a yoga instructor and led meditation for years and got into nutrition and wellness and was doing that for a while. And until my now adult sons were really struggling really intensely with now to find out undiagnosed ADHD. We tried lots of things and they struggled more so than many. And at my wit's end, bottom of the rung, and thought, okay, this is what I do to help people. How can I help him? And started getting him tested and all the rest, and came to find out it was ADHD. I came to find out all three of my children, myself and my husband, it's a party over here. ADHD
this is called relatable content on this.
It's an ADHD party. I think my dog, is ADHD.
I've got one with ADHD and one with anxiety.
Perfect.
We call it an ADHD plus family of now. It used to be family of 5, now family of 6. So I'm so with you.
Awesome. So you get it. Anyway, I started learning everything there is to know about ADHD, and it just became my passion to support others on the same journey. To that end, I went back to school, got trained in ADHD coaching. Now I teach at the ADD Coach Academy, where I was originally trained, and started my own coaching business. We have now 3 coaches here with us to support adults, couples, and families, all with ADHD. I'm on the chair of ADDA to support their education committee to really help continue this process. So I'm really in the community doing all sorts of things, trying to help people understand that there is support out there and how they can find it in all different ways.
Yeah, totally get it. There is support out there. Mm-hmm. And whether you are, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, whether you are an adult managing your own ADHD, or whether you are a parent managing kids with ADHD with or without your own ADHD, it's like, it doesn't really matter what your involvement is with ADHD. Everybody who's impacted by it needs some help and support, right?
And the big thing about that, Elaine, which I don't think people realize, is I get a lot of calls saying, can you fix my kid? Can you help my kid?
Right.
And first, we don't fix people, but also it's really about supporting the whole family.
Yeah.
Even if they're neurotypical siblings that need support, who are impacted, and the relationships that have come to be because of the differences, not necessarily just because of the person with ADHD, but just the differences within the family and the family unit, that everybody's impacted in their own different ways, and they all need support in their own ways.
Right. And what's so fascinating about this diagnosis in particular is that you can have a family of 5 all with the same diagnosis, and it can look so different in every member of the family that it's not just well, what is ADHD? But what is your particular manifestation or brand of it? And how is it different from yours? And how do we support each other and accommodate each other? It's fascinating, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that situational variability is huge, right? And again, that's what you're saying. Like it can, and this is one of the issues too, when we're working with parents, is even if the parent has ADHD, their version of it could look really different than the kid. And so they're still saying, why isn't Johnny doing X, Y, and Z, or able to do X, Y, and Z? I can, and I have ADHD. It might manifest really differently. And as Elaine, having your family of fun over there as well.
Yep.
ADHD is really a challenge of interest. And so the lower the interest, the more you're going to see those ADHD symptoms and the more scaffolding and support we're going to need for that child or adult. And so I don't think that people necessarily really understand that concept and how important it is to know when and how to support and when and how to back off.
Right. So the example that's coming to me at the moment as I'm hearing what you're saying, and it's not actually relative to parenting, it's relative to adults. I have a colleague who's a coach in the mainstream coaching world, high-end executive coach. And she was really struggling with trying to onboard a client and who she was like, she's just not motivated and she's just her own work. She's afraid of success. And she's like all of these languages, right? That I'm listening to her. I'm like, it's also possible that there could be some undiagnosed neurological issues. And her response is, she doesn't have ADHD. She can activate. Oh, okay. Well, that is one aspect of it, right? But we make these assumptions about what it is or isn't based on the lens that we have, right?
Absolutely. And she can do this. She can do that. Well, how come they can concentrate in history, but they can't concentrate in math, right?
Yeah, right.
Clearly they don't have ADHD, clearly it's a problem of motivation and not understanding. And what I like to say to parents is if we can help you understand your child's or your own or whoever it is, your partner's ADHD brain, and again, your own, that increases that amount of clarity. And with that clarity can come decrease of fear and anxiety. Because if we really talk to parents, as you do on, I know every day, there's so much of the anxious brain that comes in to parenting. Will my kid be able to be successful? Will they be able to be independent? And I think if we can decrease some of the fear and anxiety, we can start increasing the compassion that comes to this table. And what happens then? We increase the curiosity lens as opposed to the anxious lens. And so we can start being more creative and more playful in our solutions than when we're so strictly focused on the anxiety and fear.
So I couldn't have said that more beautifully myself. That was beautiful, right? Like we decrease the fear and anxiety, which increases the compassion, which increases our capacity for curiosity, for authentic curiosity. And what came up for me as I heard you saying that was this way in which part of the challenge in the ADHD community, I think, is that tendency to go for solution and go for the fix, go for the system, go for the structure. And what I hear you saying is, let's slow down and understand it before we start trying to fix it, solve it, address it, manage it, fill in the blank, whatever the term is that you want, right? But there is something that happens before that that's super important that often gets missed.
Absolutely. And if we miss that piece, what we're doing is we're just doing a quick fix. It's like a Band-Aid. In that Band-Aid fix, nothing actually really gets changed. I think of it this way, like we come to something and we have the same thought about it and the same emotion about it, and even probably the same belief about it, right? And so our actions are exactly the same, but we're expecting things to be different. And nothing changes because it's the same thought, the same emotion, same belief, and so our reality stays exactly the same. And so we really have to start shifting and a lot of what we're thinking and feeling, and those beliefs that the most well-intentioned parents can have of what life should be or could be or whatever it is. Once we can hold a mirror and they can start seeing what those beliefs are and potentially changing them. That's where the real change occurs for themselves and for their families.
Yeah. And so often what I notice, we run a number of groups for parents of different ages, parents of younger kids, parents of teens, parents of young adults. And part of what you watch happen in these groups is those aha moments when a parent shifts from, I thought I got it, to, oh, I really have been sending these judgy messages that I didn't mean to be sending. Mm-hmm. But it takes us a little bit of time as parents to get our heads around this. Right.
Well, it's even the comments. I had a client this morning say to me, oh my gosh, the aha, like I've been constantly saying to Bobby, fake name, stop being so rough on the dog, stop playing with the dog, stop doing, and I said, what is that quote? There's 20,000 negative comments a kid hears by the time they're 12, or something like that. And I think about that. And what parents don't realize is how much shame they're building into these children, unintentionally, of course, but they get it from school, they get it from parents, they get it from peers. And so by the time we get to some of them when they're teenagers, young adults, or adults, there's so much shame, which is really hard to heal on your own. You really need to be co-regulated with another human to heal that shame. And so in that, if we can decrease that at that young age, then we have less to unwind and undo.
Yeah, for sure. So let's take a quick break and we'll be back and pick this up again.
Okay.
Hi, it's Elaine. And if you like this podcast, you'll love our coach approach. Whether you're a parent looking for support or a professional supporting families, we invite you to download a free guide with 12 key coaching tools at impactparents.com/gift. You can begin using a coach approach to help kids become more independent or improve all of your conversations at work and at home. That's impactparents.com/gift.
Welcome back, everybody. My guest is Jamie Blume. And I love what you were just saying about co-regulating on around the shame. And so let's pick up this issue of shame and ADHD a little bit, because I don't think we talk about it enough. And it is so foundational to rejection sensitivity. It's foundational to defensiveness. It's to offensiveness and oppositional behavior, like this underlying shame that so many children and adults with ADHD experience from years and years and years of being wrong and not wanting to be wrong anymore, right?
Too much, too little, right? Yeah. I'm too much, I'm too little, I'm not enough, I'm too much, on and on. And what I find is if you look at the autonomic nervous system, if you read anything about polyvagal theory, right, we know that our bodies are scanning the environment nonstop, not to know, am I safe, but do I feel safe? And as we're scanning, do I feel safe? Do I feel safe? And that shame that backdrop of shame is there. Our autonomic nervous system is going to react, and it's going to react in that fight, flight, freeze. And for many people with ADHD, fib. And we forget that is a big one for ADHD. And all of that then.
Wait, what was the word? Did you say fib?
Fib, lie. Yeah, that's
lie. Right. Defensive dishonesty.
Yes. And so in all of this comes this emotional dysregulation, our inability to show up in true self energy. And then what happens, right, as we know, then we get even more off track and our executive functioning decreases, right? And then it becomes this loop. But it all starts with that backdrop of shame. And when we're in shame, that autonomic nervous system goes like that.
Yeah. So what you said a minute ago is the sooner we can unravel that, the better. Right. So I think what I want to do is talk about how do we address these issues of shame with younger kids when we're early diagnosis, when we're new in the process, and then how do we address it when it's a little later in the process? You know, what I often say to parents is it took you 17 years to get here. It's going to take a little time to undo it, right?
Yeah.
So let's look at it in those two different areas.
So I think for the younger kids, what I would say to parents is the more you can start focusing on the wins, the positives, the strengths, the talents. And when I'm working with parents, I'm saying even almost solely. So let go for a while of the negative. I promise they're going to hear the challenges. They know what they're doing and not doing most of the time, even if we don't believe they do. And really start, I don't care if it's just, oh my gosh, you tied your shoe. Whatever the little thing is, oh, you're not 20 minutes late for school, you're 10, great, So to really focus on all of the positives so that they can start creating a better sense of self as children, and they can start developing that confidence within within themselves is huge. That's what I would say for the littles.
And the story I want to play with to go with that, just for full disclosure, everybody, was the time that I celebrated that my kid remembered to bring their shoes to school.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was a big success day.
Absolutely. And also at the same time, really helping them learn to lean into their strengths and their processing modalities and help them help themselves. So if they need to understand how to break something down, help them break it down. In a very similar vein, when my son was in 4th grade and he had to practice his spelling test, he would skateboard with headphones and I would test him because he was so kinesthetic. So we do what we need to do to help these kids become successful so that they can come home and not feel like, oh, I failed another spelling test, right? So they can actually
did it with a basketball.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Whatever works.
Bounce, right.
Yeah, that would have been probably easier, less friction than the skateboard.
I don't know, it's whatever works.
Whatever works. For the older kids and the adults, we're really going to first and foremost have them have the awareness that the shame is here. We're going to have them to really tap into the signals of their bodies first, because as research shows, is we feel before we think. So our bodies give us a lot of signals before our thoughts reach our mind. And so to really help teenagers, young adults, adults tap into that emotional sensation so that they start understanding how they're feeling it before they're thinking it. And then they can pause. And in that pause, they can have choice of how they want to move forward. Because as we know, what we pay attention to grows. If we continue to pay attention to the shame and negativity, that's the way we live our lives. But if we can really slow down and say, oh no, you know what? This is just a sensation and a feeling. I'm going to lean into the feeling, the discomfort, but I know I'm okay. Then they can start focusing on how to move forward. The one more thing I'll say about that is just like we're focusing with kids on wins. This is what I do even with my adult clients. We do like high five moment lists where they're really capturing not only the cool things that they've done that they're proud of, but how did it make them feel? So that because our brains don't know if we're living it in the moment or reliving it. And so if we can really get them to relive this positivity, it's creating new neural networks so that their brains now have a working memory of something positive when they go to do something difficult. Oh yeah, I've done something difficult before.
I love that. I haven't heard that before. And that's a really nice shift to we don't want to just focus on the wins, but we almost want to re-feel wins.
Mm-hmm. And when you do that with clients and you see their whole body light up because they're reliving this cool experience, you know that they're in it. They're in it again.
And Diane and I often say, especially to parents of teenagers, and in our community, I think a lot of parents of teenagers come to us after years and years and years of nothing else has worked, right? Mm-hmm. And they land here, I got to do something different. And the notion that they have a role, right? That these kids are so locked in a shame spiral that what we often say is this kid needs a win. We just need to find a win wherever we can get it. Doesn't matter how small, but we have to start helping them see that a win is even possible. And when you've got people who've been struggling with untreated ADHD, whether you've known about it or not completely treated ADHD, right? It's those wins magnify, right? The successes breed success.
Well, and what you just said is that partially treated. Pills don't treat skills, right? And so as much as medication helps, it's really helping these, whatever age, feel the confidence, feel the win, feel the feel goods so that they know that they can move forward if they have these successes. And I think that's what you're saying, Elaine, and what is so important when we're working with all ages.
Yeah. And I do think we're moving out of the old paradigm that says that you treat ADD with medication and into a new paradigm that understands that ADHD is more complicated than that. And that you really do need a multimodal approach. The kids really do need their parents to get training. Adults and young adults really do need training, coaching, support in addition to medication. Like there's a whole realm of treatment that goes beyond a medication.
Absolutely.
Or what we would call activating the brain, because maybe it's medication, maybe it's meditation. There are a lot of things that could be.
Fun is a great activator.
Fun is beautiful.
I have a lot of teenagers who do 5-minute dance parties before every assignment.
I love that. I love that. So let's take a minute. Let's tell people more about you and then wrap up the conversation. So how can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, alongtheirway.com, and they can, I am in a lot of the magazines and a lot of journals. I do lots of training. I'm just out there. So
all right,
come find me.
Out there with a team of coaches in addition, just like us, you have a team. Coaches who work with you.
And I also mentor coaches for coaches who are out there looking for additional support. I do that as well. Yeah.
So before we close the conversation, what I want to ask you is there anything we haven't talked about that you think is important? Or is there anything we have talked about that you really want to highlight?
A couple of things. One, I would say is that parents, whether or not they have ADHD themselves, I feel it's important for them to also do their own work. It's important for them to have their own self-care, to go out and have their own fun, to separate from children, have their own lives as well. And also to notice when they're feeling triggered, what their belief systems are that they can look at so that they can show up with as much as I say charge neutral as possible. So that they're not getting charged by the things going on. And to really also ask themselves, what do I really want for my kid? Because it's probably not just an A in math.
Right.
And if they start looking at that long-term goal of what is it that I really want, I think that might shift their perspective.
Yeah, because when we really get down to, do I really want them to get an A in this class, or am I looking for them to become fulfilled and independent? And it's a very different question to ask.
It really is.
And your access point to get there, to achieve it, is going to be very different.
And one of the things that I notice too is when I say to parents in our intake session, what's going well?
Yeah.
The faces of, oh, I didn't realize I was going to get asked that. So to really also focus on what's going well with all of you, with the whole family, can be hugely impactful.
Yeah. And what's interesting, and I'm sure you see this as well, is sometimes the greatest celebrations are in the most difficult moments, right? Sometimes what's going is, you know what, this week when they came home with a bunch of zeros, or they didn't take the test, or they didn't go to school, whatever, I stayed calm and I stayed cool, and we had a great conversation about it.
Absolutely.
That's a win, even if the external circumstances aren't what you might have hoped for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I often ask at the end of my coaching sessions and all of our group sessions, and I don't know why this is coming to me to ask you today, but I want to throw it at you. What's your insight from this conversation today? What do you feel like we've been talking about?
To me, there's a lot about with the pause comes choice. Because if you even think about the way we're reacting in terms of negative comment, the way it's showing up to helping manage shame, helping manage ourselves and our children. At every moment that we can slow down and pause, we can decide how do we want to move forward from here. And I think that's a really big takeaway that I'm feeling out from this conversation.
Yeah. And that notion, I think we don't talk about it enough in the ADHD community, but to decide how to move forward means we set intention. We often move forward into action without slowing down and getting clear on what is it we're trying to achieve. What is that intention?
Definitely.
Okay, last question. As always, do you have a favorite quote or motto that you want to share with the community?
I do, and it's by Eckhart Tolle, and it is, life isn't as serious as the mind makes it out to be.
Ooh, life isn't as serious as the mind makes it out to be. I love that. I love that. Yeah, sometimes I had a high school substitute teacher who used to say, don't take life so seriously, you can't get through it alive. But I think Eckhart Tolle's is a little bit more sophisticated a way to look at it.
We used to have a big sign that says everything is an experiment.
Right.
Very similar. But yeah, just, to keep things in perspective, that and for all of us, not just for parents, but for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Jamie, it was a delicious conversation. Thank you for being with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You have a beautiful energy. It's nice to know you're out there doing this beautiful work in the world. To those of you listening, thank you for being here. Thanks always for what you do for yourself and for your kids. Take a minute and ask yourself, just like I asked Jamie, what's the insight you're taking away from this conversation today? What are you aware of now that you weren't thinking about 20, 30 minutes ago? And maybe, is there an action you want to take with that awareness? Is there a conversation you want to have? Is there something you want to lean into more? Is there more training for you? What is it for you to manage yourself, to do your own work? What are you taking away from today? And as always, thank you for being here, for what you're doing for yourself and for your kids. At the end of the day, that is what makes the most extraordinary difference. Mm-hmm. Take care, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
You've been listening to the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine and Diane. For more information on the Impact Parents community or to join Sanity School for Parents, please visit impactparents.com. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with friends who need similar guidance and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For the essentials of Elaine and Diane's coach approach to parenting, download a free tip sheet at impactparents.com/podcast.
Behavior therapy training for parents is actually recommended as a first-line treatment for complex kids. For information about Sanity School, our training program for parents or teachers, which has helped thousands of families around the globe, visit impactparents.com/Sanity School.